Republican Senate primary race between the Trump-endorsed Dr. Mehmet Oz and hedge fund CEO Dave McCormick is still too close to call this morning, with the candidates only separated now just over 1,000 votes between them. But while the McCormick camp is telling supporters to wait until all the votes are counted, former President Trump is taking a page out of his old playbook. Trump telling supporters on his Truth Social page, Dr. Oz should forget waiting for the final tally and just say he won. Quote, Dr. Oz should declare victory. It makes it much harder for them to cheat with the ballots they just happen to find. Presumably talking about the mail-in ballots, which they don't start counting in Pennsylvania until Election Day. During the 2020 election, of course, Trump tried the same tactic. He insisted he'd won the state despite more than 1 million ballots still uncounted at that time. He ended up losing Pennsylvania to President Biden, of course. Let's go right to the big board and national political correspondent for NBC News and MSNBC, Steve Kornacki. Steve, good morning. What kind of movement have we seen since the last time we spoke to you yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, not too much. You're right. It sort of is that deja vu all over again, as they say, waiting on that sort of Heinz ketchup slow mail ballot count in Pennsylvania. But basically what we can show you here is Mehmet Oz's lead in this Republican Senate primary now sits at 1,241 votes. And if you remember, basically 24 hours ago at this time, we were showing you a tally of just over 2,400 votes. So essentially in the last day, that Oz advantage over McCormick has been cut in half with what came in yesterday. Overall, it's not a ton of votes that came in yesterday. And overall, it's not a ton of votes that are left to be counted here. But what we can show you, the 1,241 is the difference right now. Where are the remaining votes? One place, we talked about this yesterday, it's still the case. Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh area. It is David McCormick's home county. There is a batch of ballots. There are actually several dozen precincts where they have not counted up. It's not mail ballots here we're talking about. Here we're talking about votes that were counted on Election Day. And election officials say at several dozen precincts they had issues with the memory chips that they have to, load in to get the count. They're talking about maybe tomorrow, maybe over the weekend, Monday, Tuesday, being able to get to those ballots, get those ballots counted out. How many of them are there? We think in the Republican race, 1,500 to 2,000, something like that. Again, McCormick's home county. He's been doing well here. When they do count those ballots, that batch in Allegheny, he's probably going to gain maybe a couple hundred on Oz from that. It wouldn't be, we don't expect it's going to be enough to vault him into the lead or anything, but that 1,241 could come under 1,000 from what's in Allegheny. Another place where we have some same-day votes remaining is Philadelphia. And again, here we're talking about maybe 800 votes. There aren't a ton of Republican voters in the city of Philadelphia. There are some precincts in Philadelphia where, again, they still haven't counted up the Election Day vote. Again, talking about 800 or so votes here, we think, on the Republican side. You can see Oz has actually been doing quite well in Philadelphia. So whatever gets counted there in Philadelphia may actually end up benefiting Oz a bit. Those are the two places with outstanding Election Day vote. And then the big story, as you say, what is left basically is the mail-in ballots, and we think the number there is about 15,000 remaining now around the state. Again, they are scattered in different counties. We think there's about 15,000 or so uncounted mail ballots. McCormick has been leading Oz in the mail count. Yesterday, the mail ballots that were counted up yesterday, McCormick led Oz by 7 points among them. That's the main reason McCormick was able to eat into that Oz lead yesterday. He's been outpacing him in the mail ballots. Again, we talked about this yesterday. It's been a pattern we've seen throughout the 2022 primaries. The Trump-endorsed candidates, in this case Mehmet Oz, have done worse with the mail-in ballots than they have with the same-day ballots. So the bulk of the votes to be counted here are mail-in ballots. McCormick's been doing better than Oz, the mail-in ballots. We're not talking like a 40-point spread. We're talking like a 7-point difference in how they're doing on those mail-in ballots. So if you add all this together, what it looks like is McCormick is going to probably get a bit of a boost when they finally get around to Allegheny County. And again, that might not be till next week. Oz may gain some when they count what's left in Philadelphia. And then the question is, can McCormick win are there going to be enough remaining mail ballots? And can McCormick win them by a large enough margin that he could actually erase all of this Oz lead and move into the lead in this race? And of course, when this all is said and done, the other thing to keep in mind is the state law in Pennsylvania mandates a recount for any result that's within I don't know how that just happened. Any result that's within half a point We're at 0.1% right now. The range of possible outcomes here, I think, when they count this up, is McCormick maybe just catches Oz, or maybe Oz hangs on and wins this by, or leads this by about 1,000 to 1,500 votes. I think that's the range. No matter where it falls on that range, you're going to be in recount territory. And the Secretary of State's already indicated probably going to call a recount next week. That could end up stretching, by the way, until June 7th at the latest.
Well, that was my question, Steve Kornacki. That's a couple of weeks away, and if Oz goes Trump and becomes Trumpy and starts declaring victory, we could see a lot of confusion and a lot of undermining of the very process that you just described if this goes to a recount, which it appears it might. And this could go any way.
The recount seems all but certain at this point because, again, the state law is 0.5%. Let me see if it writes better over here. 0.5%. And I mean, you can see it is 0.1% right now. And again, just given the limited pool of remaining ballots and what we know about them, the range of possible outcomes in terms of what's to be counted here, it's really impossible to see this thing being higher than 0.5% in either direction. Maybe McCormick is able to just get ahead of Oz. And I'm talking about like maybe 100 or 200 votes ahead of Oz. That's probably the best case for McCormick in terms of the votes that are left here. The best case for Oz, is maybe he gets a boost from Philadelphia. Maybe he does a little bit better with the remaining mail ballots than we've been seeing. And maybe he ends up 1,000 votes or so ahead of McCormick. But if wherever it lands on that range, that's going to be well within 0.5%. That's going to be well within recount territory. And again, we're talking a state law right here. Doesn't matter if the candidates request it or not. They do it automatically if it's inside 0.5%.
And as you say, Steve, that could push us out into June on a recount. Let's